Okay, so we're back, and as in America, and it's been a couple days since we were in Germany now, and I guess this is kind of just our thoughts on what we thought the trip was, or how we thought the trip was. Lynn and I are here. Mom's in Pleasanton, so she's not here with us, but I figured it'd be good to kind of just go over some like after action thoughts or what we thought of the trip and things that we found different, things that we found very much the same.
Yeah.
No, it's been 3 days since we came back. We came back on Thursday night, and then Friday afternoon, Mom had to work. She was too tired to go back home. So Thursday night, so she actually spent the night here with us, and then we drove her home early the next day. So I don't know if I'd say I'm jet lagged. I'm just exhausted. And traveling with Mom always takes a lot of energy because we are go, go, go. There's not a real rest day, like there's always, and for 15 days, like that's hard to do. So like, even though like, the first night I was back, I think I woke up twice in the middle of the night because it was like daytime over in Germany, but I wasn't like wide awake. I was just like, I'm in my bed. Oh, okay. Like I went back to sleep. But it was really just because, like, it didn't matter how long I slept. I needed more sleep. Like, even last night, we've been home for 3 days now. Even last night, we all went to bed at around 10 and didn't wake up until, like, 8, 9? Which is, well more than 8 hours of sleep, which is far more than what we usually get, which I think you and I live off of 6 hours of sleep standardly. So to get 8 hours is a lot. To get more than that is kind of like our bodies really needed it, and even now I'm tired. Like I want to go like lie about.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that it's probably because San Francisco is unusually hot right now as well.
Oh god, it's like 85 degrees.
Yeah, we went out, and I mean we just went out for lunch, and obviously that's where you go, you drink from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, it's very, very warm today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, we went out to German food today just because we wanted to see how it's compared, and it came out, I think.
Your dish was pretty good.
Yeah, the currywurst.
Like, the currywurst, but like the schnitzel that I got and the bratwurst that both Ben and Cole got.
The schnitzel tasted great, but it was not like Germany's.
Yeah,
it was good in its own way.
Yeah, it was good. It wasn't bad.
Yeah,
it just wasn't what I was like expecting, I guess is probably a good way to put it. And I would also go with the fact that like, because we were like out and about and we came back and it's like, okay, let's film this thing. I was kind of thinking like, what did we do in Germany that was really kind of either different or the same as we did here in the U.S. And I mean, 15 days, that's a decent amount of time.
Yeah, that's a huge chunk. Like everyone, so I have several of my friends are actually going to Europe right now as we speak, or have gone to Europe while I was traveling back, and all of them have a goal of spending like 1 or 2 weeks in one country, and one of them is even Germany. Like one of my friends is going to Germany. And then when I said like, oh, I'm coming back from Germany, France, and Austria, they're like, oh, did you spend a month there? I'm like, no. Like I spent 15 days traveling through it, and they're like,
but see, that's kind of a misnomer when you say that. Yes, we did hit 3 countries without a doubt, but we only went to 2 cities in Austria and 1 city in France. And it's ironic that the first city that you've ever been to in France is not going to be, it's not going to be Paris.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that people will be like, oh, you've been to France. How'd you like Paris? And you're going to be like, I've never been.
Never been, yeah.
Exactly.
But the part of France I went to was, I feel, disingenuous to France, because it is not like any other place in France. Like a majority of people spoke English there. A majority of them spoke German there. And a majority of them, obviously, notwithstanding, like, not withholding the fact that they're on the border, they spoke English eloquently, German adequately, and of course they spoke French. You know, like, and then a lot of them, I found out just by talking and asking many of the people who work there. I was like, what languages are most commonly taught? They're like, well, of course French. English is a standard because of how much business happened here. You know, like, and then German is a good option because we're on the border. So most people are like, German's very useful, and it is because a lot of people speak German. But then I found out there's actually quite a large population that takes Turkish. And I did hear Turkish more than once. Like, that was the strangest thing. And so I thought it was really cool because he was just like, I'm not sure if you've heard in some of the, like, souvenir shops or anything, but Turkish is actually commonly spoken here as well. And I was like, like, wouldn't have guessed. But,
I would say that it was disingenuous to France, or as what your thoughts of France are.
Yeah,
only,
expectations of France.
only because of the general area. I wouldn't really say that it was disingenuous to France. It definitely was France. Strasbourg was definitely French. They spoke French there. You know,
Very much so.
It was part of that country, and very much so part of that country.
Yeah, the street signs were totally different from the Germany's. The mannerisms of people were different. Like, it was very clearly a different country. But at the same time, it felt like, it barely felt like I had changed much as far as, like, the decor. I mean, obviously, like, you can tell, like,
I would say then that's why I, like, asked it, I believe, in the vlog, was why... do you feel like you went to a different country? It just feels like you're still in the same country.
It felt like I went to, like, an international neighborhood of Germany.
Yeah,
to me, you know, like, where it's just all like, oh, this is where our international students go.
So
and
this is
I would
what this
really
is.
put out there that, you know, because Strasbourg was contested, the Germans took it, the French took it back, the Germans took it again,
Yeah,
you know.
kept taking and going
And then
taking.
they gave it back to France, or the French took it back.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I understand that whole thing, and I understand why it kind of feels different. I also understand why the culture there is different, as well as the architecture there is
A little different,
very
yeah.
different from the rest of France. Like, I think I said it to you guys while we were there, is like, you know, it does feel like bits and pieces. It's like, wow, this is France right here. And then other parts was like, whoa, this does not feel like France at all. You know, and it's funny that we could do that with France, because then when I go, what about Austria? When we're at Innsbruck or at Rute, it didn't feel like we left Germany at all.
No.
Could you have told me if I didn't tell you that you're in Austria?
Yeah, if you guys didn't tell me I was in Austria, I would have thought Innsbruck was just South Germany. Like, it honestly, there was no part of it that stood out that was different than other parts of Germany. The only thing I would say was the main downtown area was a bit wider and a little cleaner, and that was it.
And that was
That
just...
could just be because of the town, though. That had
exactly,
nothing to do
and had
with,
nothing really to do with
the country.
the country itself. I think the most different place was probably just Strasbourg. Berlin
felt
I
like...
would say Berlin was the most different place.
Yeah, Berlin felt like a monster of its own. Like,
Or
that was
Frankfurt.
its,
Frankfurt felt very different as well. It didn't feel like the rest of Germany. When we were in Munich or Heidelberg or Dresden, that all felt to me very different. The architecture was very much the same, and the kind of the way that everything was put together, the unity in a sense of it, like, it all matched up to each other. Like, it was all... Dresden was definitely Dresden. Like,
Yeah.
and Nuremberg was definitely Nuremberg. You know, Rothenburg was definitely Rothenburg. And so that's why I was able, when Mom said, hey, what was your favorite castle? And I'm like, oh, that's easy, Munich.
Uh-huh.
It's because Munich stuck out to me. And
Yeah.
or she's like, what was your favorite part? It's like, oh, the Rothenburg wall was amazing to me, because that was unique to that area in itself, and I could remember that very clearly. Now, if you're going to ask me about, like, my driving there, I wouldn't be able to tell you what the difference between the driving there was. That's like super hard for me to differentiate. It felt the same driving everywhere, except for I would say in Austria. I knew I was driving in Austria because it was 130 kilometers per per hour was the top speed limit that you could hit. You're no longer on the Autobahn. And when I was driving in France or in Strasbourg, it was barely any. Like, I barely drove in there. Mm-hmm. Like, we crossed the river into France.
Yeah, that was it.
And then it was like you're driving 40 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
And you're driving into the city, parking.
I'm trying to think, like, there was no real, well, as far as driving goes, I just recall the over frustration of not being able to identify the speed limit, because the first 2 days we were there, once we were driving...
Well, the first mistake that I made while driving while I was there was right out of the airport, got out, I checked the car, right?
Yeah.
Went back into the lane to the stoplight, and I totally forgot where the stoplight was. Like, I'm like looking for it, and then the guy behind me honked, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, it must be green. Like, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's go. And I'm looking over, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it was green.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest thing, was that the stoplights, I forgot, were not
on the other side,
in front of me.
Yeah.
But or at a good distance to me where I could see it, but being right next to me, that was like super hard to like have to crane my head over to look to see what the light was.
Well, I just recall like having to look up all the signs because I couldn't remember exactly what each sign was, you know. And what's funny is in teaching one of my clients how to identify road signs as a public safety goal, one of the signs I looked up was dead end, and I noticed that here in America, we just have a diamond that's yellow and it says dead end. Or we'll have a rectangle that says dead end. We don't actually have a symbol. And in Europe, they have a symbol. And so it's a T, and the top of the T is red, and the rest of it's white, and it's on a blue diamond. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw that, I was like, I actually know what that means, because I looked up that sign before. But then I was like, how do we identify these numbers in these white circles circled with red? So I was like, okay, well, let's look up, you know, what these are. And then, like, as you're driving, I'm, like, looking up the signs, like, okay, this means the speedway is this. This means this, you know, like, so it's, like, the speed limit changes intrinsically once you enter a town or a city, or if you are going on a crossway, which is like a bridge or a clover turn, the speed changes as well. They had all these limitations that you would know as a native driver there because you understand the driving zones, but as a foreigner, we're just all like, okay, there are signs that clearly show you, like, skyline, this speed limit, and then, like, crossway, this speed limit, and then just cars with cars, the speed limit, you know, and it's just like, you have to just identify what all of them were, and so that to me was like, oh wow, okay.
You know,
like,
looking them up was kind of obvious that we're going to have to do that. Mm-hmm. That was just one of those things that I'm like, okay, we're just going to have to do that. And the reason being is that, you know, I'm driving, so I need to know the signs. The only complaint that I would put out there about that would be a lot of their signs, it's the signs, just the ones that I wanted weren't enough. Mm-hmm. And I can't, like, even remember the amount of times where I'm like, what is the speed limit here? Yeah. And then I'm on the Autobahn and I'm just waiting for some guy to go by me at like 200 kilometers per hour. Yeah. And then I'd be like, okay, this must be Autobahn because he's going so fast.
But then there'd be another car next to you that's going barely your speed. Yeah. And it's just like...
Yeah, being caught in between that was like really very nerve-wracking, yeah.
Yeah.
Like where it was just one of those things where I'm like, okay, am I supposed to be I'm
going faster in your lane?
Yeah, faster or exactly. And so...
Well, just like moving on from driving, though, another different expectation, I suppose, was the pure amount of salt in all of the food. It didn't matter what food we got. It seemed to be that they enjoy their salt. It didn't matter if we went to a local dive or a popular restaurant or a touristy restaurant or a fancy restaurant or a stall. All the food, while delicious, had a higher content of salt that at least I'm used to, and I'm sensitive to salt. Like saltine crackers to me in here in America are too salty for me. So to have more than that was really hard. But one thing I noticed was pretzels, which they put salt on. We were not the only ones who would pluck the salt off. It was actually very common. Like, I'd look at other tables that ordered pretzels, and then people would be talking in German, and they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're just, like, plucking the salt crystals off and then munching on it. And I was like, okay, so clearly salt is just an increase over here, and I don't know if they're trying to do something. But, like, it didn't matter if we had Asian food, German food, fast food. It all came out very tasty, or to the point of like just being too salty. And the fact that we had to buy water regardless was very tough to be paired with that. Although they do like very full flavors, and by that I mean like rich without the milk. So like I had a Dresden like specialty of like a wine reduction on this roast. And the sauce was extremely... You remember that fancy restaurant or whatever? And the sauce was super rich. Didn't have cream in it. It was just like very punchy, very tasty. It was like sour and salty at the same time, and a little bit of sweet at the end. And just a little went a long way. Like, and I feel like that went with a lot of their things.
In Dresden?
It was not at Dresden. It was
at
the
Bastille.
It was at the Bastille, but that was in tandem with Dresden. Like the menu item was like a Dresden specialty.
Right.
So like, and I was like, well, this is the closest we're gonna get to Dresden food, so to speak. So we'll go ahead and just try that.
Yeah.
But I think, what was your favorite like meal or your favorite snack? Either one would do.
Favorite meal. It's a tough one. I would have to say that was probably. I'm going to go with the Nuremberg sausages, because that's the one that sticks out in my mind the most, with the pork knuckle. That was actually quite good. I'm trying to think if there was a schnitzel that I preferred over another.
The schnitzel I had in Ruta, the meal that we had in that tiny... We stayed...
Oh, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, after the Alps, we stayed in this tiny, barely anyone speaks English town of Ruta. And, like, our hotel people, they didn't speak any English. And our hotel room was really strange. It was a bedroom with a shower stall in it. So we went out to eat, and Mom had put aside this, like... It was weird. It was, like, a Gutenberg cafe or something like that. Either way, it was a bar. So we went there, and they served food as well. And we got this, like... Charlie got this, like, trifecta of meat or something like that.
What? I think you're mixing up places, Lynn. So when we went to Ruta... The first place that we went to, we left the hotel, went to the restaurant Mom wanted to go to.
But it was a stand. It was
a
Imbis.
Was it?
It was, yeah, because we went to the grocery store first. That was the first time we walked through a grocery store. And then Mom was like, okay, now we need to find the restaurant. And she didn't realize that Imbis meant like a snack shack. Which, by the way, once again, if you see Imbis attached to something, do not expect like a fancy restaurant. It means a snack shack or a snack stand. No, doesn't mean it's bad.
I was about to say,
means,
it's good.
Just means it's like a fast food kind of like grab and go. You're not expected to stay there. Some of them don't even have seats. It's just tables. You're expected to just eat what you order and leave. So it's so that was what Mom originally planned for, and when she saw what it was, which was a snack stand, she was like, "No, we're gonna sit down. I don't want this."
Yeah, so you're talking about the Edelweiss.
Edelweiss, yeah,
Edelweiss
cafe, Edelweiss.
Cafe Edelweiss.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was. Really
the salad was really nice. The schnitzel that we got was really good.
Yeah. The
trifecta. The trifecta
was amazing. There was like this grilled tomato or something that they put on there that was really good with the meat. Like,
the only thing bad there was the beer. I didn't like the beer. It was like cheap beer.
Yeah.
But the rest of it was really like, that to me was a memorable one. Not just because it was like in a strange place, but imagine going to the most like remote town ever, and that's essentially what we did. It's super remote over there.
So like, what was the most disappointing meal then?
Disappointing meal, I would say it was probably one of the first meals we got, which was which was, where was it? It was the first time we were gonna try, I think, pork knuckle or something.
Oh, where it tastes like ham. I thought you liked that.
No, the one that tastes like ham tasted great.
I think.
Yes,
yeah.
The one that tasted like ham, that was actually really good, and I could eat a lot of that. But the other one, the first pork knuckle I tried,
like
tasted so it tasted so gamey. It tasted just like stinky meat, like it was just unwashed, like the hog just rolled in dirt its whole life, and then they were just like, rinse it off, cook it, and we're good. It tasted like mud. And so when Mom ordered pork knuckle again, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna have any. She let me have some. It tasted like ham. I was like, I will have all of that. So different.
Hands down, worst meal is that Italian joint that you went to.
Yeah.
That was the most disappointing food that I've had.
See, for me, I was so happy with it because I got the pizza I wanted. Yeah. So I was craving pizza on for the last 3 days. I was really hankering for some good pizza. Mm-hmm. So we went to a pizza joint that was in a super touristy place. We noticed it was somewhat busy, so we're like, okay, and it's got high reviews. And so we're like, all right, cool. So we go in, and I order pizza because that's what I want. And then my mom ordered.
She ordered
vegetarian, gluten-free, gluten-free pasta, and she's like, she loves that type of stuff. So she got it, and it's zucchini noodles, and she was like, oh, I don't know if I like this, and it's like, well, it's gluten-free for you. And then Charlie got the carbonara
and minestrone.
And
both of them were just so upsetting.
Yeah, like
the minestrone was straight up terrible. I've had a lot of bad food in my life, and that definitely goes into the books as one of the worst things I've tried. It would be one thing if it was just thin soup with vegetables. This was literally... The color of the soup was way too clear for what it should have been, and way too thin, and had no flavor. It was like they forgot to put the bones in it. And then, not only that...
Spices,
period. All of the vegetables were overcooked and they fell apart and tasted like nothing. It was like someone
I'm just thinking that it was the end of the night for them, and it was sitting in their pot, and then they're just like, oh, well, he ordered it, so we better give him it.
Yeah, it was...
Yeah, it would have been better if they just told us they were out.
Yeah, exactly. That was just so bad. And so... Yeah, that was like a horrible meal. That was the worst meal that I had. The Chinese meal on the last night would probably be the second worst.
That's so funny because I don't think it was that bad. It was a lot of oil.
Yeah.
The noodles were ridiculously oily. I had to put it in my bowl and then pour out the oil in order to eat it. So that was a little strange. But the rest of it, I'm kind of okay with.
Every other meal that we had, I'm pretty okay with. All the brew houses that we went to.
I was about to say, definitely my favorite meal was in Ruta. That was in Austria, and then
the chicken at Oktoberfest was good.
Yeah, that was the
chicken at Obermagau was really good. When we were on the way and we went to the Imbus, where I got a burger, Mom got the half a chicken, and you got, was it pasta?
Probably.
I think you got like butterfly noodle pasta or something like that.
Something like that.
Or penne, and then.
Yeah, where the German dude was super friendly.
Yeah, that guy was super nice.
And and I just love to add, German people, when they are formal, they are super formal. You are not going to crack through that glass wall. But when they're friendly, oh my gosh, the guy was serving before us, he returned a glass and he apologized about something. And the German dude behind the register was just like, don't worry, man, we're all family in this place of work, in the world, it's totally okay. And I was like, he is so, just forgiving. He's not just forgiving, he's, overly forgiving. He's really trying to make you feel really okay in your skin here, because he knows you are out of your element, and he's totally at home. And he was like a surfer dude in the middle of nowhere. It felt like
he was super nice. That guy.
So nice.
And he just kept cracking jokes. What's in there? And he's like, it's a burger, man. It's just a hamburger. That's what it.
He's comfortable in every language. That's the best way I can describe him. He's just I have a half a chicken right now. If you want any more, you gotta wait a half an hour. But you know what? That's a great chance to walk around, see what else is in this town. It's not a bad idea. Just saying, He was
that was really, the only time that we I feel that that's the time I felt that we missed the most when it came to tourism stuff. Like, that was so welcoming. We had all that food, and then when we got up to leave, we were looking, I don't know if you remember, we were looking for the gorge on the German side that was supposed to have all the wood, the wooden bridges and whatnot that Mom wanted to see.
Everything was midtown.
Yeah.
And we thought it was at the edge of town, is what Google Maps kept telling us. But then when you looked anything else up about it, it described it as in the middle of the town, which is where everyone was going. So it just felt really silly that we'd just be like, we're driving here, and literally in the middle of a road, Google Maps is like, you're here. And it's like, there's no one there, no parking, you're in the middle of like a freeway almost, and you're just like,
I can't stop.
To the Austrian side to go see it, where we walked on the metal grating that Mom didn't want to really see. She wasn't really interested in. So we still got to see the gorge. It just was not the gorge that we originally intended to see. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh man, that kind of sucks. Like, I felt that was the biggest, like, oh man, we missed out on something great.
Yeah.
Like, even in Berlin, where we didn't get to really see all that much of Berlin, like, we saw bits and pieces of the Berlin Wall, Checkpoint Charlie, and all those type of deals. To me, it wasn't that, like, I didn't feel that I missed out on that. Like, I do want to go back to Berlin to drink Berliner Weisser, and I want to try a Berliner, you know, and that type of stuff. But that hamburger that we had in Berlin, the currywurst, that was all good, and it was fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, it didn't feel like we missed something truly special of that place.
Yeah.
But in gosh, what was it called? Edelberg?
No.
This was on our way from Obermargau to
Innsbruck?
Ruta.
Oh, to Ruta, yeah. No, that one, yeah, we definitely missed out on something important and special, and we could tell because, this is kind of a funny indication, but when you drive past where all the tour buses are, you're probably missing something because people are paying to see what's important in that area. Yeah. And we passed a lot of tour buses, tour groups, and a lot of just walking people. We were going towards the most desolate spots. Not to say that's terrible, but it is a big indicator of, okay, something's going on there, or something is there that's important to see.
Yeah, but I don't remember seeing tour buses on the way from there to there.
There
were a few tour buses in the area, but it wasn't that big of a deal.
I didn't see anyone parking anywhere, so.
But the fact that so we asked the guy about, like, the cool looking thing, and he was like, oh yeah, it's like
a kilometer that way.
A kilometer away.
You could just walk there.
Yeah, like.
It's like, oh, that's strange. Like,
I would have preferred to try to walk and find it, and because I'm better.
I think we would have found it.
I'm better on the ground when it comes to navigation, because you have time to stop and look and see indicators of, okay, everyone's walking that way. Yeah. We should go that way. You know, it's way harder to do in a car, and I'm always exploring. Geocaches are always pointing the way usually. Like, I'm just like, I think this is a good thing to go to. Yeah. And so that was unfortunate. Although I will say the part that we did get to, on the Austrian side, I guess. Yeah, that was actually really neat. Like, comparing that one to the Tarako Gorge in Taiwan or whatever. Comparing the two, I actually do like the one that we saw in Germany better.
Yeah, the one in Germany was far prettier.
Yeah, it was really pretty. The water it went from like this...
like emerald green.
Yeah, this like jade green to emerald green to blue. And you can... It was like Willy Wonka's chocolate waterfall. It was really cool. And then they put all these little things maybe every half kilometer or so that you could see, like... like if you listen closely, you can hear the wind play, or the sounds of the water. When they hit through these pipes, they'll play this particular thing, or they had like, oh
look, like the spirit of the gorge is here, and they had this like motion sensor that you'd walk past and it'd go hoo hoo, and it would just like the eyes would light up and everything, and that was super adorable. I love how they characterized the entire gorge as having a spirit. Every part of nature in there had something to go on with. Like, I thought that was really neat.
I wonder if that's really a German-Austrian thing, though. Like, I could understand it if it was Asia, because, like, Asia thinks everything...
puts
spirit in everything. But, like, that is really interesting how they did that. And
it definitely feels very fairy tale-esque, though. You know, so I could see that happening. Yeah. Like, when we went to... the monkey on the bridge, and I was telling you about the legend behind it. You know, like, oh, it's holding a mirror,
Yeah.
and you got to do this, and if you touch this, then this happens. And if you know, like, it felt very cool to see all these little like local legends of things, and I feel like that gorge really embodied like this is definitely potential for fairy tales. Like there's no doubt about it. Even without all the added things, even if they didn't put the walkway there, even if you just looked down into it, you could see like it feels magical. Like it really does. The fact that the water changes and the wind changes throughout every crevice and like whistles and stuff, it's really cool. So I could understand why they'd have like fairies and nymphs and stuff coming out of nowhere. You know, like. So that was really cool. Despite the fact that we missed the main attraction, we still got to see something that was really neat.
Well, I mean, it's all one attraction. It's just there's the German side and the Austrian side. Kind of like how when we went to Zugspitz, or Leipzig, and to Zugspitz Mountain, it's Zugspitz, maybe? Mm-hmm. And then it was the whole, you could go to Austria on the mountain. You just had to cross that, like, 2 bridges. And then you're in Austria.
Yeah.
And then you cross 2 bridges and you're back in Germany.
Yeah. When you go to the Sitzbig, if you go on that side, definitely make sure...
Oop.
There it goes.
Yeah.
Definitely make sure you go all the way across into the welcome section of Austria. Because that part's really cool. I love the fact that they have the Austrian symbol on one side. So you go in and you walk and then you turn around and there is... the German symbol, not in the same spot, but across the way. And you can clearly see a difference in both the German and Austrian side of the Alps. The German side is very rocky, it's mountainous terrain. The Austrian side is welcome to the country. This is where everything grows. And so if you're like going on a perilous hike and you're going up the German side, you're going to come down the Austrian side, you're going to be welcome back home. There was a really cool thing where another part of that was they had another gondola that went to the glacier of the German side. And that would have been pretty cool to see. But that was like, you know, it was more money, it took more time. And unfortunately, if you didn't have hiking gear, they were just like, you probably shouldn't go because it's not worth your time. Because everyone who was there was climbing on the glacier.
Right.
So, and then... I wanted to attempt to climb to the tallest point in Germany, but even when I opened the gate and stepped down, everything was water. So my foot immediately slipped off the first rock I tried to step on. And I was like, yeah, if it's going to be like 50 more steps like this, it even says on the door, like, rock climbing gear and or alpine experience required. Clearly not everyone was listening to that, and clearly some people got to the top without having any of that.
I mean, as they would.
But it was at their own risk,
yeah.
And it clearly says so, like, warning, you are entering alpine terrain, and this you must enter at your own risk. And there were plenty of people walking, you know, to and from with helmets, carabiners. They attached their thing to the line as soon as they opened the gate. Like, they understood that it was a risk. Yeah, and then there were, like, idiot tourists with selfie sticks, just like you saw water all over them because they would slip and fall in the water, and they were clear. There was a point where it got really narrow and there was clearly a side to Germany and a side to Austria, and people were just like hugging the line and like scooting over because it's very scary. So I was just like, having that with the GoPro, I'm good. You know, like I love the fact that I saw what I saw, and that was it. Like, I wanted so hard to try, but I also just recognized, no, that's probably not a good idea. But that was beautiful. The Alps, definitely go there. Like, that's 100% worth it. And the soup that they had up there, I don't even know what, it was like
was good. The
tomato?
type,
they had like a goulash soup that they served at the cafe there. After spending an hour in the cold... and it was like 30 degrees up there. After spending an hour in the cold, that was a really good, nice soup to warm the soul afterwards. There's also a cool there's a few geocaches up there as well. So definitely go after that if you're a geocacher. And gosh, what other memorable things? Rottenberg Wall.
Yeah,
that was sick.
That was great. Like the entirety of that wall was amazing.
Sorry.
Like the the fact that it still exists is
Yeah.
amazing.
After hundreds of years.
Because I guess it wasn't destroyed by the war. Like, that's another thing. Like, everything was destroyed by the war.
I feel like part of it must have been because there were crucial parts of the wall that had brick in it that had writing. And the writing could be obviously German, but also like we found Japanese, that we found American.
But
we
I
found
think that's just for donations to the not the reconstruction, but renovation of the wall to maintain the wall. And you're going to have to do that. That makes sense.
I guess so, but...
But, like, what I'm talking about is that we went to castles that were rebuilt from the ground up because they were destroyed by the war.
That's true.
Like, everything in Nuremberg that we saw was rebuilt because it was burned to the ground by the British.
Yeah.
And that is something that, you know, when I look at it and I'm thinking, wow, okay, you know, how much of this is original and how much of this is just a recreation of
was it
what we saw?
Was it
or what was?
I think it was Frankfurt. Yeah, it was Frankfurt where we saw...
Frankfurt, everything was new.
Yeah, Frankfurt, everything was destroyed in the war except for the church. And they were saying it was like that plaque said it was like an act of God, essentially, because it suffered very minor damage, and they described how you could see the minor damage in some of the sculptures and whatnot if you looked up, and sure enough, some of them were like missing arms or noses or whatever. But the rest of it was mainly the outside of the church that sustained any damage from debris from the fallen buildings around it. And they showed pictures of the destroyed Frankfurt, and sure enough, it's just the church standing. And then they showed the next picture of a ton of construction, and it's all around the church. Like, you know, like nothing's really, they're not doing anything to the church. And then finally, like modern day, like, look, we are supporting the church now because it's the oldest structure in Frankfurt. And so that was really neat. That was really cool. Speaking of castles, though, Neuschwanstein is worth it to see the bridge, not really worth it to go inside. And the biggest reason is because Neuschwanstein is specifically for the location. That being said, I think location-wise, as far as like castles and whatnot go, I think the Highline 176 or whatever that we went to, the castle ruin, 179, the ruins we went to, I think that was actually a little cooler to look at.
Yeah, Neuschwanstein was definitely disappointing. Like, that was just like...
Don't have high hopes for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see once, and I would not tell anyone not to go if they haven't been before, but I was like, if you've been before, you should already know that you don't need to go again.
Yeah.
It was definitely disappointing. Like, that's all I could say about it. It was just disappointing. It didn't matter if you could take photos, any of that stuff. It was disappointing the fact that it was such a modern castle that, like, it was not as cool as, like, say, go to Munich, my favorite castle, or the Wurzburg residence, you know, the first castle we went to. Like, those were, like, interesting. Or even, what was it? I forget. The large French-looking castle. I can't even remember what city it is. I mean, I could pull up a photo of it. But, like, it was the one that had the canal that went around, and you could take a gondola ride around the entire thing.
Yeah, that one...
Which it only took us a half an hour to walk through the entire thing.
It didn't even take us a half an hour. We had a half an hour to walk through it. We took 20 minutes, and that was taking our time.
Yeah.
Because they closed 20 minutes before the last allowance of a ticket is 20 minutes before closing. We got there 25 minutes before closing, and we're just like, okay, we'll have to do this really quick. We finished in about 15 minutes because you only see one level of it, and even then you don't even see the whole level. You just see parts of it. And it honestly looked a lot like the other things we saw. I will say one thing about the castles in general is, for our season that we went, lots of construction and lots of renovation. So there were plenty of times where we would like look at stuff and we're just like, that would be cool without the scaffolding. You know?
It reminds me of Japan a couple years ago.
When we went to see the
Like-
9 Disciples or whatever,
Yeah,
and it was just
like
completely
everything,
covered.
yeah, was like covered, and like in a way that really sucked. But you could understand why they were doing it. They have the Olympics coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have all the things up, and they're just trying to renovate everything before 2020. And it just, to me, it was, yeah, I get why they're doing it in Germany. It just was like confusing how much, because we literally covered the entirety of the country, save the north.
Yes.
The only place we didn't go was to
Hamburg.
like Hamburg in the north. And going all over and seeing the exact same like renovations happening.
Yeah. That was
it's
a
like
little strange.
The year we chose was bad, is what I feel.
Yeah, because I will say, like, the parts that we could see were very neat. But a lot of them kind of blended together because it was a bit of a whirlwind trip. So anytime something looked like a French hall, a lot of those blended together. With the exception of Munich, when you started, the first thing you walk into is they're trying to showcase this like thing made out of shells. Looks very Mediterranean, I guess, in a way. It looks very cool. And it's also where the toilets are. So it's like, okay, this is the start of your tour. But then the next room you walk into is like a grand hall with tons of paintings and tons of gold and sculptures and this and that. And it's everywhere you look, you cannot stop looking. So that was, and like every room was very exceptional. And so that's the Munich resident, I don't know, the palace or whatever.
All of them were like
Yeah.
that. Like, I don't know. I didn't really know where you were going with this sentence. Like, what was your train of thought?
Oh, well, I was going to say, like, the palaces were of one of two types of designs, where it was one where it's like kind of a French hall, where it's doorway after doorway after doorway, and they look smaller every time.
Okay.
So there's, like, that style, or then there's just, like, this grandiose, like,
Halls.
big room and hall and big room and hall, and those were way cooler to look at. Like, notably for me, Neuschwanstein, while it was disappointing in general, had one room in particular that was really cool, and that was the fairy tale painting in the room.
Yeah.
That room was very, like, I could stay in there for a little longer than than the tour allowed, because every wall had, it was like a comic book almost, because it was telling scenes of a story. And I love it when they do that. The only thing is that works better in halls. So when they did that in grand halls, those grand halls were really nice to just stand in and stare at all the detail and whatnot. And they did a lot of like porcelain and stucco and stuff on the ceilings and whatever. So those were always really cool. I think that the nicest palace or residence that we went to was the tiny one meant for one person.
Oh, yeah, your favorite one.
That was my favorite, and that was just because it was so opulent and so small. Yeah. Like, it was such a strange thing to witness, because you're used to opulence meaning something huge. So they would try to make it bigger rather than the smaller. But this this king was like, no, this is just for me. Like, I don't want anyone around. I don't care who you are. If you want to come visit me, you're going to visit me in like a 10 by 10 room. Like, that's it. Like, I don't want anything big. This is for me. And he did it. Like, and the
I also think he was running out of money at that point, though. Like,
I don't know if he
cared. So many castles, and that one was just for him.
Like Ludwig or whatever, yeah.
And so that was like very, very interesting. That's how that it was like a small mansion turned into a palace. Where it was like a French palace with the room of mirrors and all the statuettes and everything. So
that was super cool. I still thought that was really cool, and the little gardens that you could walk through, that was also really pretty as well. So
I mean, one of the things that I'm gonna go with to kind of finish this off here is that looking back at all our stuff, I was like, wow, we experienced a lot of rain.
Yes,
like,
last
it was
8 days.
Lot more. It's actually more than that. Like, I thought it was only that, but no, we had rain at the beginning of the trip, then a little during the middle of the trip, and then a lot at the end of the trip. And because thinking about it now, I knew how to use the window wipers of all 3 cars that we went to.
That's true.
And that's one thing that you have to kind of learn, because like when you're driving in Japan, your window wipers are actually on the left, not your turn signal, and it's the reverse. So that's actually how that kind of works. And so you have to learn all those things, as well as how do I get the back window wiper to work, or how do I wash the back window. And so that was another thing that I kind of took advantage of.
Yeah. No, the looking just generally looking at all the pictures that I have, yeah, it definitely did start to rain
Quite a bit.
within 5 or 6 days of our trip, because the first 4 days we were clear.
Yeah.
And then 5-6 days it starts getting overcast a little bit, maybe showers here and there.
Yeah, and
And
I
then
would
it
say
started to
that's the
rain.
thing. There was a lot of showers, maybe, if that's what you want to call it. But
Yeah.
if I need to use the window wipers, I'm going to call it rain.
Yeah, no,
And
that's true.
that's what it was. And so that was kind of like a thing that I noticed after looking at all the photos and everything. It was like, okay. And maybe why I didn't take more photos here and less photos there was because of that whole rain situation. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of funny, just kind of segueing into the cars now. Our cars got bigger
As the trip went on. That was really silly.
Like, which I was fearful of. I did not want the SUV at the end, and we got an SUV at the end. And so, like, you know, at the very beginning, it was that tiny Ford Fiesta.
Uh-huh.
And then we got the Skoda, like,
Yeah, we got the little Skoda.
Glacia or something, Galactica or whatever it was.
Yeah, I could not tell you.
And then at the end, it was that Ford SUV. Like, like
It
how
felt
did I end up driving
so-
a stick shift Ford SUV?
Yeah.
Like, that is such a weird thing to come upon. Like, all the cars that we drove were stick. That is one thing, and I was already willing to accept that. Like, whatever, it's fun that way. I like it. The controls of the cars are pretty typical. I will say that there were some things that I enjoyed in the Ford better than the Skoda, but there was a lot of things in the Skoda that I liked better than all the Fords that I drove, because we drove 2 Fords and then the Skoda.
Yeah. They were all fairly comfortable, though. Like, I never felt...
I mean, you and Mom
Pinned.
sat in the passenger back seat. I never did. I drove the entire time, so,
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't know, but I had really little problems driving the cars. I had really little problems parking the cars, save 1 or 2 times with the Ford SUV. That was, particularly in Strasbourg, I think was when I was like, okay, you just got to get out and help me out here. Like, I could see, you know, I had the reverse cameras in all the cars, and they all had the car sensing things so that I could, like, get close.
Yeah.
But, like, when it comes down to, like, the controls and everything, there were some irky things. And, I mean, I guess that also includes kind of the internet that we rented, the Hippo thing.
Yeah.
That kept going out on us, and that was, like, that was
The
a
more,
pain.
yeah, the more we used it, the more it started, and I don't mean, like, in capacity, I mean, like, time-wise.
Yeah,
like,
it's just
in the
as
beginning
time
it was
went on,
fine,
yeah.
but then as time went on, like, first week, we were doing okay. Second week, it started...
Yeah, just no service.
Dropping,
Just
dropping,
no service.
yeah, just immediately, and
And-
that was frustrating. That was really when we depended on Mom's
Yeah.
cell phone so much.
Well, her Google Fi worked really well out and everywhere. Like, I'm talking about in the middle of the mountains when we were in Heidelberg going to the dam.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, nav is not working to get us back now because
There's no service
there's
here.
no service here. But we turn on Mom's phone, or turn the service back on Mom's phone, and sure enough, she gets signal. And it goes to direct us back to where we want to go.
That was super helpful.
And I think that was the day we went back to Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Or,
Something like
yeah,
that.
I think, and so that, yeah, then we just went straight back to Frankfurt from then.
And it definitely made a difference with having Wi-Fi versus not having Wi-Fi, for sure. Like, Wi-Fi, I think, is, at this point, it's necessary for travel. It doesn't matter where you're going. If you're leaving your country, you should buy a pocket Wi-Fi. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a smarter move, because it
Well,
helps you way more.
Prefer just to have it on my phone. Like, I just want my phone to work. But the fact that when we're in all the online sites, all the tourist things, everything says just use the pocket Wi-Fi because you can connect multiple devices to it. And I see how that's helpful, and I see, like, I like it in the car where Mom's able to be on her iPad, and you're able to do whatever you want on the phone.
Yeah.
And everything's plugged in because we have the charger in the middle. But I would say
Once
that...
you separate, it's a lot harder.
Yeah. But once, yeah. And so, when you separate, it all goes, like,
It's
out the window.
It's just useful to the one person it's with.
Exactly. And then if you are you know, if that one item has no service, well then you're just SOL. Nothing has service then.
Yeah.
Right? And that was a huge thing. So I just felt that, okay, if I just bought something for my phone, that would have just been so much nicer to be able to do that.
Get like a SIM card or something for
Exactly.
the phone, like we did over.
Or use get T-Mobile and just have service over there, or Google Fi as Mom has.
Yeah,
And
Google
just
Fi
use
is
it.
excellent over there.
It just works so well.
Yeah, and T-Mobile is pervasive over there. It is everywhere in Europe, or at least in Germany. Like,
Well, it is a German company.
yeah. So
Anyhow, I think final word since that camera's died
yeah,
is
well worth the trip.
yeah, well worth the trip. Definitely got to go back.
Yeah, I was about to say revisit Berlin for sure.
Yeah.
I think I'd personally like to hit up Frankfurt again to see a little more of it because we spent half a day there. Realistically, we didn't spend a whole day there, and then
There's just not much to see in Frankfurt, unfortunately. It's just such a business center.
Yeah. I would have liked to probably go into the museums in Dresden. There seem to be some really cool, because it's a lot of history over there too. So it's like Munich and Dresden and Berlin could definitely get another trip out of me. Like, I don't know if I'd spend an entire trip for Dresden, but for Berlin and Munich together, yeah, like spend a few days in Munich and then fly over to Berlin or something like that. I'm totally okay with doing. Like, it just seems like there's a lot more to see than, because we scratched the surface on all the cities, which was great. We were able to see a little more or a little less of certain things, and so we were pretty happy. Like, the only thing that we really just got an urge to scratch now is Berlin, because we're just like, we were there.
Well, might as well do that in Hamburg at the same time.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
And while we're there, I'm just going to go to Austria, because that's we should do a deep dive of Austria. And I guess technically you should go to Paris as well. Go actually to France.
I don't know, I might just go to Prague. If I'd go towards Dresden, go back to Czech Republic kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you're in Austria, you can go to Prague too.
Yeah.
Or to Czech.
But well worth it to go. Get used to scrubbing toilet bowls.
Yeah, right.
Because every single doesn't matter if it's public or private, everything's got a toilet brush, so that you can clear up any and all skid marks. But which I thought was kind of a funny cultural thing. But yeah, and then bring water, or at least have water handy. The tap water is drinkable, by the way, in Germany, so you can totally drink that.
Yeah,
and be
so
fine.
just bring a reusable bottle like we did.
Yes, absolutely.
And you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, anything else?
No, not really. That's pretty much how
that
this is
stuff.
going to end.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
And so totally recommend going to Germany. It was a great trip overall. I think we all had tons of fun, and I guess until the next trip.